So how you doing today, guys?
Doing well.
Doing good.
Well,
It's hot out.
It is very hot out. There's been a lot going on.
It's
Busy
hot
times,
everywhere.
definitely crazy temperatures.
But, they say when the sun's out, guns out. So this is a great time for those of us who lift.
Yeah, indeed. And I believe that is the topic for today, getting that muscular, manly look. Speaking of the, I see you guys both have the beards, and so can you tell I've been 2 weeks solid without a shave just to see what I can grow out.
Doing good.
Literally the best I got.
My screen resolution isn't that good. I'll take your word for it. Oh, yeah, there you go. All right.
A little bit of
Nice,
peach fuzz.
nice. There it is. We got it.
So
Keep at it.
I might grow it another week or two and see if it actually comes in. I'm not expecting much though. I've tried before. At least I'm not patchy like I used to be. So that's a positive.
I think Skim here, he trimmed his beard up since the last time I saw him, and mine is probably whatever he just trimmed off has been added to mine. So had some beard transfer going on.
Well, if you can give me some of that, I would appreciate it.
A lot of that I have to thank for jiu-jitsu, because like once it gets down to like so long, it becomes pretty painful. As guys go to choke you or do lapel chokes or something, It takes your beard with you. So this is about as long as it can go for that.
Yeah, my 8-month-old is getting to the point now where it's a really fun thing to pull on. So that might be influential in me trimming that up at some point.
All right. So let's talk about lifting. What do you guys, what's your routine right now?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and jump in. So when this whole coronavirus stuff started, I had been wanting to put together a home gym setup, and I'm pretty simple with most of my lifts. I stick really to like the big four: squat, deadlift, bench, overhead press. And so fortunately I had some of the equipment. I just really needed the bar and the weights. So I was able to get a hold of that without completely reaming my bank account in the process. And so really I've been just focusing on those 4 lifts, and then with a supplemental arm day. So basically overhead press day with some other shoulder stuff, bench press day with some other chest accessory work, deadlift and squat again with other attendant exercises that I can do here at home. And really the results have been pretty awesome. I haven't lost much strength, and I've been going through a cut here for the last little while. And I was just doing deadlift the other day, and I actually had the best deadlift session that I've had, despite it being a cut and despite having, been out of a formal gym for a long time. So I was really pleased with those results. And I was down, at the peak of my bulk is at about 210 pounds. I'm at about 183, 185 right now. So it's been going really well.
Not bad.
Awesome. Very similar. I've been doing for about 2 years now, 5-3-1 in various arrangements, I guess. I've been doing 5-3-1 boring but big now for about, I think I'm on my 8th cycle. Before that, I did 6 or 7 cycles of 4 hard gainers, so that not very different. I got into 5-3-1 after doing about maybe 3-4 months, something about the typical time that you would do starting strength or strong lifts 5x5, where you hit the plateau. You can't keep adding 5 pounds every bench press every week. And 5-3-1 has been awesome. I've added so much strength. Almost everything I'm doing now has been deloaded. I kind of just hit the ceiling on everything. It's kind of nice how they were all, when I say the 4 big lifts, squat, bench, deadlift, and overhead, were all kind of staggered. So I wasn't up against a 1 rep max on all 4 of them at the same time. But I pretty well have hit the ceiling on them all now. I'm working through a deload, which is neat because I'm still setting PRs. Like just 2 days ago, I set a 10 rep PR in bench press, and I'm now working, now that the weight is lighter, I'm now pushing new 9 rep or 10 rep PRs. So it's, and if I keep that going, adding 5 pounds every cycle, I should add 10, 15, maybe 20 pounds more to my 1 rep max till the cycle comes back around and it gets too heavy again.
Awesome.
So it's a really good intermediate program, and I think it has a lot of sustainability to it, being that you're not always up against, banging that really high weight, low rep ceiling all the time.
Yeah, that's awesome. And for those of you out there who might be hearing the word cycle and thinking steroids, no, that's not what he's talking about. Look up a 531
thanks for
exercise
clarifying.
program. Yeah, it's a great program, great intermediate program. I actually haven't done that one just because I have not plateaued in the program I've been using for really about 3 years now. It's Mike Matthews does a program, Bigger, Leaner, Stronger, and it's super boring and it's really, really straightforward. And that's why it works, is because anything that is stupid proof, I can probably pull it off.
Don't overthink it. Yeah, a cycle in 531 is 4 weeks. So there's a week in each, it's like the first week, it's 3 sets of 5 with a lighter weight. The second week, it's 3 sets of 3, progressively getting heavier. So now it's heavier percentages of your training max. And then the third week, it's a 5, it's a 3, and then it's a 1, which would be the heaviest. It's like 95% of your training max. And then the fourth week is usually a recovery, like 60, 70, 80% or something like that.
Yep.
So that's what a cycle is in 531. It's basically, instead of adding 5 pounds like with starting strength or strong lifts, a lot of folks, a lot of guys start with, you're adding 5 pounds every workout. And then maybe you graduate to adding 5 pounds every week. Well, once you can't do that forever. And so you got to start adding 5 pounds a month.
Yep. How about you, John?
So I'm a little envious of your guys' home gym setup. Have not had the chance to put mine together yet, or rather start purchasing it. I will be doing that pretty soon. I know we want to take advantage. I'm trying to transition and phase my wife to the point where she can quit her job within the next probably 3-4 months, something like that. And before we do that, she has a perk where they cover half of all exercise equipment up to $500 a year. So we're trying to make sure that we can start purchasing that home gym stuff to capitalize on that before she goes. But all of our time right now has been consumed still by building a play set or just a lot of out-of-town travel. So
you don't have
my lifting, yeah, this thing is gigantic. So it'll be.
I'm expecting a replica
summer.
of Disneyland, by the way.
That would be nice. No, but we have been out of town for the last few weekends, which really kind of eats away at the time to be able to work on things. But my plan is to have the home gym set up, start purchasing stuff within the next 2-3 weeks. And in the meantime, I've been using I think I wrote a review on MRP about this maybe a year ago or something. It was the BotBot personal trainer app, which gives basically different options for routines. When you go into the gym, which I usually ignore it when I'm at the gym because I prefer using like a modified gray skull. But when I am at home, it's nice because then it, of course, keeps track of push-ups and sit-ups and all kinds of other dips and whatever that we do it around the house using body weight. So it's kind of nice to be able to have that option, and then you just tailor it to what type of routine you really want to do. So that's what I've been focusing on is body weight with a lot of cardio. Cardio, I usually am running some pretty heavy hills. I try to do 5 to 8 miles 4 times a week, usually pushing 3 of my kids in the stroller. So that can, I noticed that the arm strength it takes to be pushing the kids around and keeping them where they need to be is definitely more than I was planning when I was running, but you get used to it after a while.
Do you even lift, bro?
Can you find workout equipment? Like weights and free weights now these days. Has that gotten better? Can you find stuff?
I'm seeing some options. A lot of things are sold out, or if you want it delivered. So if you want to buy nearby where things are open and you're not going to have to pay delivery fees, the pickings are pretty slim. When it comes to things with delivery, because of the weight involved, some of the things I'm seeing have like $500 delivery charges. So I'm not all keen on that. So it's just a matter of me actually taking the time to scope out all of the local areas and seeing what I can pull together.
This
I
is
do
an
know
area
that
where
there's,
Craigslist is your friend, and so is OfferUp. I got all of my weight off of those, and I, paid more than I would have paid 6 months ago, but it wasn't unreasonable, especially since you're not paying a delivery fee. The bar I bought new because it's the centerpiece of your gym. It's worth getting right.
Yeah, so that's
Yeah,
the
definitely.
plan. I do know that I've seen this squat rack itself that I want to buy. There's a pretty decent one that's local that is still in stock. So that's probably going to be my first purchase, just to secure that before it goes out. And then my plan is to take over my garage and make that my workout area, which I think Horns of Apathy kind of mentioned that at one point in one of his posts. So that's where he's got his workout section. And I'm trying to build something similar. I still have all of my power tools set up from building this playground set. So I'll have to balance trying to actually put all this together while still being able to get some work done on that. But I think I'll be able to make it work.
How will that work in the winter, or like right now when it's, wicked hot? How are you going to handle that?
The heat doesn't bother me. Yeah, I don't care about the heat. I can work through that. If anything, helps you sweat off the extra water weight better, right? The cold, I will probably end up starting with some kind of a cardio or something indoors just to get my body temperature up. And then I'll probably, an hour before I work out or something, pop a space heater out in the garage, keep the door shut.
I'll take the bite of it out.
Yeah, shouldn't be too bad.
So moving a little bit theoretical here, I want to offer a thought and get your guys' opinions about it. So I was talking to a friend about lifting and why it's important, and he took the perspective of it's basically not, and he's a Christian guy. And I asked him, okay, imagine you saw a dog and it was really fat or it was really skinny and malnourished. What would you think about its owner? And he's like, well, I think it's probably a pretty bad owner. Right. So who owns you? And the idea there, God owns you. And so what you do with your body, he gave you this gift, and what you do with it reflects on your ownership. So what are you guys' thoughts about that?
That's a great way of putting it. Absolutely. I've often thought about it just to kind of take a different angle, is that it's your masculinity is like three legs of a stool. You have your mental, or we talk about your frame, your spiritual side, as well as your physical side. And if any one of those legs of the stool is incredibly weak, your stool, or i.e. your mission, what you're able to accomplish for the kingdom, isn't very much. So if you're out of shape, overweight, unhealthy, maybe developing diseases or disorders later in life, you can't really be effective in your life or for what the Lord has for you. Just like if you're really weak spiritually, but ripped and really strong, you're gonna also not be as effective. So it's the physical aspect of it really shouldn't be overlooked. It's super important.
Right. It's one of those areas where we're very quick to judge ourselves, right? And say, hey, I'm my own judge. I feel good about my body, therefore I'm fine. And I remember even telling myself that when I was, 285 pounds. And so I can see the mentality of where guys come from when they want to ignore the importance of staying in shape, lifting, burning off the extra calories and all that. But at the same time, it reminds me, and I wrote about this in 101 even, right? Where Paul is talking about, he says in 1 Corinthians 4:3-4, I think it is, I care very little if I am judged by you or by any human court. Indeed, I do not even judge myself. My conscience is clear, but that does not make me innocent. It is the Lord who judges me, right? And so it's this idea that we shouldn't be looking to outside influences to decide how we look or what we should do, because that would be living in their frame, right? And then at the same time, he's saying, I don't even judge myself because I'm not even the best judge of my own character. There's all kinds of stuff where we are deceptive and don't have the ability to understand how God perceives us. But at the same time, when we say it's the Lord who judges me, we say it's his standards that we're trying to live up to. And that's a mighty high standard to try to meet. And a lot of people will want to apply that singularly in the realm of, theology or service or how we love our neighbors, right? But I think that it applies in pretty much every area. And that's why Paul talks in other passages about, I beat my body and make it my slave. And we see passages in Daniel about how there has to be when a biblical author is writing about staying on a reasonable diet and being in shape and how that caused him to be more fit and his men to be more fit and capable for battle than all of the other king's men who were eating, all the fat of the animals. And for him to be able to say, hey, I'm going to write that story in there rather than keeping it to myself means that he wanted everybody who would be reading his books after this to recognize the significance of that. And so anytime we see things like that coming up, it just tells me, hey, God thinks this is pretty darn important. We better think it's important too. And if we try to, I don't want to say argue with God on the point, because people who object to this they don't perceive themselves as arguing with God, because they're going to try to write off any of these types of passages and say it doesn't really matter, right? You're misreading that. You're trying to put too much into there. I don't know. I'm probably rambling at this point, but I think you guys get what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think there's an idea out there. It's kind of this Gnostic idea that's very prevalent in the church that things spiritual are so utterly prime that everything physical is on this kind of second tier. And I think to ignore natural revelation is to do ourselves a disservice as Christians. It is one of the ways that God reveals himself, his intent, his creation. And if we're supposed to exercise dominion in this creation, we kind of need to understand it. And I think that even if the Bible doesn't explicitly address calculus, doesn't make it any less of a valid science, right? All knowledge is God's knowledge. And so understanding how the body works, understanding how to be physically fit, what it does in terms of attraction, those are all things that we as Christians are called to exercise dominion over. It's not that we're called to just exercise dominion over spiritual things, although that is true. We're supposed to exercise dominion over physical things and to nurture those things and cultivate and husband those things and make them better. And so I think the church has neglected most areas of physicality in this modern age, and I think it's to our disservice. We see the effects of that and the fallout from that in very real ways. In my own experience, I very seldom see happy marriages where the people are unattractive and they're not fit in some way. When I think about most of my fellow congregants, it is just not a common experience. And it makes sense because we weren't designed to be attracted to people that were unhealthy. We were designed to be attracted to people who are operating in the way God designed them to operate. Don't pour water in your car for gasoline. It's not going to go. Don't expect anything else other than a disaster in that case. But we don't operate our bodies the way they were meant to be. And then we expect something good to come from that. And it doesn't follow.
Right. And we've talked in past podcasts about the peripheral benefits of lifting, right? Where it increases your testosterone, it gives you more energy, it gives you an incredible surge of confidence. You have no problem at that point just being able to walk up and talk to strangers out of nowhere because you are the prize when you are ripped and buff and everything's you're hitting new PRs. It does wonders for your internal frame and strength of being able to follow through. And with that, part of me assumes, and it's not just that I'm telling guys, hey, lift so that you can get all these other benefits. What I'm really getting at here is I think that God designed the human body to be able to only really achieve many of those benefits through the lifting process and staying in shape and being fit, because God wanted to say, hey, if you want the best for your own life and your own sense of internal fullness and satisfaction, I want you guys to be following through with this type of maintaining your body as well. Crickets.
I was muted. So I think, I was starting to launch into a rant, but anyways. So I think it's really interesting because you're right. I think that there is these attendant benefits that come with being physically fit that are often overlooked. And at the same time, if somebody were to just do those things for those benefits, I wouldn't fault them. People work jobs more often than not because it gives them money. It gives them a tangible benefit that they can then take that and do something with it. If I'm physically fit and it's partly because I want, better energy levels, yet that's a good reason to do it too. I think that there's an abundance of reasons. And I think as you begin your lifting journey, if you will, those reasons begin to change over time. You guys probably experience this. I think a lot of people start lifting because I want to be attractive. but eventually they continue lifting because it is something that they want to do for themselves. I want to see how strong my body can get. I want to see how disciplined I can be in the gym. I want to continue to see this development for my own sake, and that the motivations have changed and become stronger over time. But I'm okay with people having very shallow motivations to begin with, because that's the first step a lot of people need to take before they can understand what those deeper benefits are.
Right. And I want to be an example to my son, right? I want him to be
Absolutely.
able to see, my goodness, my dad was somebody who exercised, he kept his body in shape. And, we all make mistakes from time to time. There's going to be good phases and bad phases. And I'll tell you, when Corona hit, I probably did have, gained 5 pounds, and I'm working on doing much better than I was ever before, right? So there's going to be ups and downs in the whole process. But on the whole, we want to be able to show that we're always taking the next step forward and that we're trying to train the next generation, right? And that's really where, and I often tell people, for me, lifting is a lot about discipleship. Everything I do is always tied to my mission in some way. And in this, I'm trying to disciple my son, say, look, this is what it looks like to be a man who follows God and who lives up to the potential of what God created us to be. And so in the same way, not just with discipling my son, but if I go to the gym, I'm often meeting guys there. There was a guy who I was going to the gym with, or probably at different times, there's probably been 3 guys who I've discipled who I would just go to the gym, work out, and that would be our time together, right? There's one guy right now where not so much lifting as it is, because obviously the gyms are closed and I don't have my home set up yet, but we will walk or jog or something anywhere around 8 miles a day every time we go out. That's another hour that we can spend just chatting about Christ and life and how are we doing about fulfilling our missions. And so that's really one of the things I would want a lot of guys to say or see, is that it's not just something that is taking a time out of your day so you can look better, but it can be something that wraps into the fulfillment of your mission as well. And I think I shared this in the frame section in one of our past podcasts about how, I'm telling my daughter when she asked me on a run, how is it, why is it that you go running so much, Daddy? And I said, to be healthy and stay in shape and look good, which is the things that my daughter as a girl would want to hear, and it would benefit her. Whereas my son says, well, that's not what you told me. You told me that you need to exercise so that way you can look good, because when you look good, people want to follow you. And when they want to follow you, then you can make disciples. I'm like, absolutely. Right. And so everything we do at the gym is not just about your own internal frame. It's not just about looking better or all of these other peripheral benefits that we get, but it's also pointed directly toward our mission and saying, if we want to have the most impact for God's kingdom, how are we going to do that? Well, you have to be somebody that the rest of the world is going to want to listen to. And it's no secret in society today, everybody listens to the most attractive people.
Yep. So I want to shift gears kind of at the tail end of this conversation a little bit and just assume that our listeners are working out, that they're lifting, that they're working on this. I think we have addressed a lot of the reasons why. And I think that at this point, if you're not, you're an idiot and you need to figure that out. So assuming you're not an idiot and you're going to continue to actually push yourself and grow your body and develop your lifts, how do you stay motivated, gentlemen?
Excellent question.
I don't like that word. I don't like that word, motivation, because
I like where you're going with
I'm going to sound a lot like I'm going to sound a lot like Jocko here, because that's where I learned it. But motivation isn't going to get you up in the morning. Motivation, if I rely on motivation, I wouldn't have done. I wouldn't have got up and lifted this morning. But it's developing that habit. It's developing discipline, and that's one of the reasons I'm glad you brought this up. Oz, because that is one of the so important things about lifting, is it helps you develop discipline. It's probably one of the best ways to develop discipline in your life, and it will just flood into other areas of your life, because you'll develop habits. You have to develop habits. Things from making, how to make things easy, like set your work clothes out, set your workout clothes out in the morning. For me, my shorts and my shirt and my workout shoes are sitting right there. They're ready to go. I don't have an excuse. The coffee's the one. So it really comes down to developing discipline, because if you rely on motivation, it's a fleeting feeling that'll come and go. Motivation can get you started, but motivation won't keep you in it. And that alarm goes off 2 weeks into it or 3 weeks into it. It's 5 o'clock. You're like, heck with this. Motivation will let you hit the snooze and go back to sleep. Whereas discipline is knowing that you have a bigger goal in mind, and you're gonna put off that current pleasure for a bigger reward later on.
So I'm going to just aside on that because I wholeheartedly agree. So one of the things I touched on in lifting is not a suggestion. It's on the sidebar. It's the only bolded one. Read it if you haven't. The
Awesome
thing I
post.
touched on in there and to expand upon on there is when you see somebody in real life, so they're not photoshopped or somehow touched up. If you see someone in real life with a very physically fit body, you automatically know something about them. You know that they are incredibly disciplined, because even if you use steroids, even if you have a trainer, even if you have all of these other benefits, you still have to show up and do the work. There's no substitute for it, and that's what makes it valuable. When you see someone, you see that, and they're very fit, you know that there is somebody behind that body that is very disciplined. And that's part of the reason why psychologically people see that and they're attracted to it, because discipline arguably is the currency of success. So I agree with you. That's probably one of the chief mental benefits and life benefits of lifting, is that design around how do you become as disciplined as possible. And I'm glad you went through the motivation is not everything, because my best lifts were on days where I wasn't motivated and I just showed up anyways and did it. This last time I did
I'm
deadlift.
there with you too.
Yeah, it's weird. It's this fluke thing where it's like your expectations are low and you're just showing up and I'm going to lift what I can. And if it's a crappy workout, at least I showed up to the iron and I did my part. And I did that the other day with deadlift, and I pulled 405 for a couple reps, and I hadn't done that since this coronavirus thing. And
Wow.
I was pretty stoked about that. Yeah, and that was no straps. That was just chalk, and I was pretty enthused about it. And I was so jazzed up about it that I went ahead and did I normally do three sets of 6, and I did 345, which was a PR for that as well by another 10 pounds, and just flew through it all. I was sore as a dog for like 3 days afterwards because it was the most I've ever lifted in one session. But at the same time, I was amped about it, and so and I showed up that day with having zero expectations, being very unmotivated, but it was a matter of discipline.
Yeah. That's good stuff.
And the dopamine rush that you get from true accomplishment like that, like achieving that goal, that 405 or that new PR. I had made I have a sheet, an 8x11 sheet for each of the 4 lifts. Across the top is 1 rep through 10, and then down on the y-axis is opportunities to write new PRs. And it is so cool to look out over that and write a new 10 rep PR. Absolutely. And then look up and see, hey, 6 months ago, I was 15 pounds behind, or 2 years ago, I was 40 pounds behind. And then 2 years ago, that was real. That was a real hard lift. And today I did all this, I did all this weight more. So it's a pretty big pump right there to be able to see that.
Yeah, and there's no substitute for it, because you can't fake it. You can't. There's no cheat to get there, right? I mean, with money, maybe you inherited something and that's why you're rich. Or with women, maybe you're a good pickup artist and you managed to convince somebody to be with you. But when it comes to like lifting a weight off the ground, it's very simple. You can't cheat it. It's there or it's not. And so I think that's one of the reasons why you get such a dopamine hit, is because that was something that you disciplined your way into being able to do. For example, when I started cutting, my goal was I wasn't going to cut until I broke the 1,000-pound club. And so I did that the day after Christmas this last year. And I started all of this lifting. I was about 170 pounds, and my combined big 3 was right around like 450, give or take. And so to like more than double my big 3 combined was hugely motivating. And definitely one of the things that when I look at life accomplishments that I'm pretty amped to look back on, and I'm excited to add more to it down the road.
Oh yeah,
awesome.
Seeing those mile markers fly by is definitely one of the biggest motivators, I would say. I loved the very first time, because I'd made it an ambition for many years. First off, the 1,000-pound club was definitely one of my life goals that I'd had since I was in high school. And I had gone through so many years where I'd just given up on that dream. And then when I started lifting again and discovered the red pill and was going through the strong lifts, Grayskull after that and all of that. And eventually, I guess it's probably 2.5 years ago, I hit the 1,000-pound club for the first time, which is wonderful. And then I know that I had some kind of injury, phased out of it, had to get back up to there again. But even after that, you know, it wasn't enough just to say, all right, I hit the 1,000-pound club. That was my life goal. I'm done now, right? Instead, the next thing I start shooting for is, okay, I want to bench 300. And then the first time that I was able to hit that, 300 mark, it was just incredible. It's like that huge rush that, and especially when you're sitting at 290 for a month and a half, and then you're at 295 for another 3 months, and you can just never get that. But it keeps you going because you're close and you're pushing, always hitting that next boundary. But I like what you were saying before about the idea that the motivation for me is only a middle step of the process. So I always teach guys that I'm discipling that there's like a 3-stage process to get to transformation. So the first starts with inspiration, which I think is where Reddit really hits its limitation. Inspiration is when you perceive your world in a new way. You have this new understanding of, oh my goodness, I had no idea that this was even a thing before. Now that I'm studying it and researching it, I can see that this is having massive implications for everything that I do, right? And so your perception shifts. Your mind is in a different place. But you're not actually doing anything about it yet, right? You're inspired, but motivation is when you get to the point of saying, okay, now I'm actually going to get off my butt and do something about this, right? Because a lot of people start at inspiration or stop at inspiration. It's often what we call mental masturbation, right? They just sit there and pontificate in their heads about how wonderful it's going to be as soon as everything happens the way they want, but they never actually get off their butt and start doing anything. And so at some point you have to get to that motivation, which is going to say, okay, now I can see it. And because I see it, I want to do it and I'm going to live it. And that can get you so far. But at some point you have to get to what I would call actual transformation, where you're doing it so thoroughly, so regularly, you have that discipline where it's just becomes second nature to you, that it becomes a part of who you are. You don't need motivation to do it anymore. If anything, it would take some kind of argument or motivation to get you to stop doing it, right? And so for me, for example, I remember when I was first getting started, all the times that I would have to convince myself to go to the gym and say, all right, this is something I have to do. And I needed those shallow reasons to get myself there in the first place. And then as it changed, I eventually started realizing, oh my goodness, this is something I enjoy doing. I really want to be here. And I'm finding excuses to go, right? Not excuses to get out of it. And so eventually, now with the way that I work out today, especially when I can do it with my kids, whether it's push-ups with my son or going on a run with my kids or whatever it may be, I love being able to incorporate that next generation into it, to the point where I am now grieved on days when I don't get to go on a run or do my lifting or push-ups or body weight routine, I guess I should say, for right now. It's frustrating to me, and I'm looking for opportunities and excuses to work it in. And I feel like that is the point when it doesn't take discipline anymore. It doesn't take motivation. It's anything. It would take discipline and motivation to get me to not do it, to focus on other things that might need to be a priority in the medium, in the short term, I guess.
Yeah, by that time it's a habit. It's the
right.
The groove has been worn so deep that it's a habit. I fully identify with that. It's so pleasing and so in the rut to go into my weight room in the morning. Got my coffee, put a podcast on.
You're one of those morning guys. Right. Oh man, I'm jealous.
Absolutely.
I'm definitely.
That's where my discipline fails me. I am such a night owl.
That's what my wife was just commenting the other day. When I mentioned I had pulled a muscle, I want to say it was like last Wednesday when I was doing some push-ups. I always am known for pushing my body harder than I should. And so it's very rare that I actually get injured, but it does make me injury prone because of that. And so I was trying to hit more push-ups than I should have done at the time, and ended up popping a blood vessel, getting a nice bruise on the inside of my arm. Serious pain for, the last 5 days, probably up until yesterday. Finally started feeling a little better. And so she's asking how I got the mark or something like that. And I just said, I was just doing my push-ups. And she's like, you mean you actually do push-ups? Well, yeah, every night.
Totally different mark of the beast.
You're asleep.
Mark of the beast mode.
I like that.
I think that actually does bring up a good point, though, is lifting sustainably. So I think that one of the things that can really throw people is doing the ego lifting thing and injuring themselves. And there's nothing stupider when you really think about it, but we're all prone to doing it because maybe it's the dopamine gets too crazy and you think, oh, I can do one more rep or whatever. But I think that's been one of the key things in being able to lift sustainably over the last 5, 6, 7 years now, is just not pushing it when it's not the right time. And it's like, it's a weird balance of, am I making an excuse not to push it, or am I actually going to take care of my body and protect it by not pushing it? And that's going to be something where you just have to be honest with yourself and God. But it's super important if you want to be fit for your life, not to destroy your joints or your muscles or anything else like that. So I would say that the whole idea of like, oh, squeeze out one more rep just because you can. Well, one more rep in that workout is great, but not if you don't do any more reps because you just totally blew out your back and now you can't deadlift anymore.
Right. So that's going to be my biggest struggle when I get my home gym equipment, right? Because I'm going to remember how I was when I was at the gym, and I'm going to want to jump immediately back to where I was, even though I know that doing body weight routines is nowhere near the same lifting degree, right? And so that's what I'm going to be most worried about is how can I meter myself out so that I'm not injuring myself by immediately jumping back into trying to bench, 285 pounds, which is I think where I was immediately before Corona hit.
Yeah, Jeff Nippard has a really good video on getting back into the gym after basically being stuck on body weight exercises, so I'd recommend it.
Okay. Sorry, Dross, didn't mean to keep cutting you off there, though.
Yeah, there's a lot of benefits and drawbacks to working at home, but working out at home. But one of the benefits is it's less tempting to do that ego lifting. You're almost always by yourself. Maybe you have a buddy over. You can still get drawn into it. Like I want to see 3 plates on. I want to see 4 plates on. But it is less tempting, and you don't have buddies with you or other people to impress. And it's also easier to not be like if you're starting out strong with 5x5 and you're only squatting 95 pounds to start, or squatting the bar to start, you're all by yourself. It's maybe as you're developing frame, it's not as not as concerning who else is there. So, but on the flip side of that, I see the drawback of not having a buddy there or not having someone there encouraging you to get that last rep or encouraging you to hit that 1 rep max, and you need that little shout to finish. Finish it up, because it's all at 5:30 in the morning. It's all you. No one's yelling at you.
I completely remember the first time that I tried to do a legit squat. And for a while, I was just doing the machines like the leg press and all that, thinking, okay, I can handle this pretty well. And then the first time I did an actual squat, thinking, well, I can max out the leg press machine, because at the time I was a pretty big guy, right? My legs are used to carrying around a lot. And then trying to do an actual squat with good form, I was doing literally 95 pounds and struggling to get down. It was insane. But it's fun to see how far you can come in just a few short years.
Yep, and that's one of the
time.
Yep, big benefits of tracking your lifts. Always track your lifts.
Amen. All right, I think that's all we got, guys. Thanks for hanging out and talking about this, and we're going to start going through the sidebar series more directly going forward, and I'm looking forward to hitting up the next one. So that was obviously 101, the importance of lifting, but I'll catch y'all later.
Later.
Good talking to you guys.